it's TheFrXion here, Tank12, however you call me. I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks. Still a bit sick from the colds that I caught during the weekend, but still, we're going to be continuing with the videos because I wanted to talk about the TL-7 and the Yak Tiger prototype. Now, both of these tanks have hit the live server of World of Tanks about a month ago. I think about a little bit less than a month, I'd say about 3 weeks ago. So why is this relevant? Because nobody has seen these tanks on the European or Russian or North American server. I'm not sure about the Russian server. It could be that they have released this since it is now not the same platform anymore. But this has been released on the Asian server. So on the one hand, I was kind of scared that they were going to be releasing more loot boxes this year, other than the Christmas loot boxes, which will be coming in at the end of November, probably at the beginning of December. And Asia was actually the only server that was picked out to have these vehicles and these loot boxes. Now, I'm not sure if that is good or a bad thing, because on the one hand, I have a bit of quiet on the North American server. I don't have to worry about these tanks coming out. I don't have to worry too much about making a video because I don't have access to the content yet. But on the other hand, well, it kind of sucks for Asia, I guess, because they're kind of like the test guinea pig for World of Tanks now, for wargaming, where they try out these things. At least it seems it could be that kind of situation where Asia is going to be the guinea pig, where they're going to be trying out these things first. So I don't really know what the TL-7 is like. I didn't even know that it was a tank destroyer, but what we know so far is it is a tier 9 premium tank destroyer, and I always thought it was actually a medium tank, but it's supposedly a tank destroyer. So let's take a real quick look at like some of the collision on the vehicles so we get an idea for the armor that we have. Overall, the size, it's a small tank. It's really, really small, and it has like some really interesting features on it as well. What you can see here, blue, like the very light blue, this is basically spaced armor. Now, if you remember, I made a video on the IS-2 Shielded. This is almost the exact same thing. Now, if you take it and look at it in the visual model, it is like grills that are supposed to be catching heat shells when they fly towards a tank. Now, I'm not sure if they work as well as they did on the IS-2 Shielded, because on the IS-2 Shielded, they actually worked fairly well. So you have quite a few of these shields, these heat shields on the side. You have it right back here on the side of the turret and on the other side of the tracks as well. I don't think that this at the back, this is like a cage for additional equipment that you carry when you're moving with your vehicle. I don't think that does count as a heat shield. Well, in the game it does not, but maybe if you just had these, I mean, basically it's the same. It's just the iron bar that's strung across the line here. It would also be acting as a potential heat shield. At least I think so. So what are we doing today? I'm not going to be showing any gameplay. We're going to be talking about the vehicle. We're going to be talking about its potential from the characteristics, if it is actually a decent tank or not, and what it will mean for us. Do you think it's still coming out? Because we're so close to winter loot boxes. I really doubt that Wargaming wants us to squish these tanks into like the end of November so that we get like November loot boxes as well. So I have the feeling this is going to be, well, exclusive to Asia for now, and it's not going to be coming to World of Tanks NA or EU this year still. I don't think it will, because we're going to have different tanks in the Christmas loot boxes. Because if they would sell us these tanks in the Christmas loot boxes, they would have to change the tanks for the Asian server, because the players on the Asian servers already had the chance to get this, and I don't think they would kind of release it twice. It could be the case that they change the vehicles and we get this tank for the Christmas loot boxes, but we'll have to see what it's going to be like. So let's take a look at the armor profile of this vehicle. The front armor is basically 100 millimeters thick, but effectively it goes yeah, it goes up a bit, like all the way to 170 millimeters thickness. But with the shell that we have right here, 252 millimeters of penetration, no issue, except if you're shooting like at one of those angled surfaces on the side where the armor kind of aligns with the rest of the other armor. So it's a very American design, but yeah, pretty easy to pen basically with anything that has enough pen for going to deal with 100 millimeters. You shouldn't really have any problems. But as you can see, as soon as you angle it a little bit, if we go over to the live, to the collision model, the visual model, sorry about that, you can actually see that it's a bit rounded, but at the same time it is fairly straightforward. It's an American tank with some roundness to it, but also some very nice edges. But if you have the side, basically anything is going to go through. You can see side is 50 millimeters thick right there. The front is 100 millimeters. The lower plate is 80 millimeters. So that's not going to be a big issue. The turret, on the other hand, well, I'm expecting quite a bit of armor on the turret. 170 effective. About 200 where the gun mantlet is. But you can actually have a pretty good chance of penning this thing if you shoot below. Like if you shoot like the turret ring right down here, there are actually quite a few places where you can do damage to the vehicle, because there's one spot right down here next to the gun mantlet where it's only 125 millimeters thick, and on the other side as well it's only 125. But yeah, it's pretty rounded, so good luck with hitting those spots. Now what about the roof? If you're below, it's going to be auto ricochet most of the time. If you have a little bit of an angle, well, it's going to be a pretty easy pen because it's only about 60 millimeters thick. But one big weak spot I can already see here is basically this entire part where the viewport is for the commander. The commander up here and the gunner right there. That looks like to be a pretty big weak spot. It's still 110 millimeters thick, and effective, it's still 233 millimeters thick. But yeah, you can see if you have enough pen, chances of going right through there aren't too bad. But yeah, you don't even have to worry about anything else than that cupola on top. If you spot this tank and you have the cupola, you shouldn't have to have any kind of problems. It's very prominent, it's very large, and it's a very easy target to shoot at. So let's go over to the statistics and see what this tank is capable of. Now, the only things I've actually added is a good crew. So the crew is like 100%. It has all of the well, bonuses that I usually would have. I'm also going to be adding some food for the vehicle as well, just in case, to improve it a bit more. But you know what, we're going to do that later on. So the DPM overall is 1,830 damage per minute. It is a 120 millimeter gun, and it's called the 2B British gun, with a rate of fire of 4.81 rounds per minute, and it's autoloader, so it should have a clip size of 4 rounds right there. 360 damage for 120 millimeter gun. That's well, that's a bit sad if you ask me. Usually it would be about 390 to 400. Usually it's 420 millimeter gun. 252 millimeters of penetration with the AP shell. The APCR shell has 315 millimeters, and it also has a shell velocity of 1,492 meters per second. For a tier 9, not too bad, but it's the issue of AP and APCR once more. I think a lot of players would rather have heat. Would give you a better balance in the end, because the AP shell still has 1,060 meters per second shell velocity, so it's not too bad. How about the high explosive shells? Great shell velocity, 105 millimeters of penetration. Also sounds really interesting. So it looks like that the high explosive shell is actually a viable usage case on this vehicle. How many shells do you carry with this vehicle? Is there a way to find that one out? That would be quite interesting to see how many shells you're able to carry with this vehicle. Well, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll have to figure that one out once it comes out. So we're just going to put it like that at the moment. You can see penetration at 500 meters, well, it does drop off quite drastically, 227 millimeters. Well, that's about tier 8 levels. Some tier 8 TDs, well, they have usually better penetration than that. Well, moving on, 40-second reload time for 4 rounds. That's 10 seconds for a single shot. That's quite the long reload time if you ask me. With equipment, you can probably boost that a little bit, but gun rammer is not going to be an opportunity or available for you. So yeah, improved ventilation is probably going to be a must if you want to improve your DPM. Also, premium consumables right there. Intra-clip reload is 2.3 seconds, which is fine, I guess. That's not too bad. Dispersion is not that great, 0.38. And what about the dispersion values when you're moving your tank? 2.4 second aim time. You can work with that, but the dispersion really is something that I would want to lower, certainly with field modifications and equipment. 0.38 is not very reliable for a tank destroyer at tier 9. Now, dispersion values while moving and traversing the turret and the tank, well, they're quite different. Moving and tank traverse, it's atrocious, 0.28 and 0.28. So this tank is going to be incredibly bad when moving. So you have to be stationary for it to really take effect. The turret traverse, on the other hand, though, dispersion values right there, they're quite good. So 0.112. You basically expect this from a tank destroyer with a turret. That's how they balance it. And usually the tank traverse on the turret is not as great either. But we're going to talk about that in just a second. So after firing, you can see, yeah, it's going to get worse. We don't have to talk about any of that. Top speed is 50 kph, which sounds pretty interesting, sounds pretty great. It's a small tank, so it doesn't weigh as much, I think. 15 kph in reverse, that's going to be a bit of a problem if you're playing the hull down positions. 480 horsepower engine, so it's actually not that strong in the engine department, but you still have 17.1 to 4 horsepower per ton, so acceleration wise for a tank destroyer, it's actually not too bad. You could improve it with obviously modifications and equipment pieces. You can see it does lose a bit of speed on soft, but medium and hard, it's still quite nice. And effective traverse is 32 degrees per second, and in soft terrains it turns really sluggishly, but I think a lot of players will have expected that. So yeah, gun elevation 15 degrees, that's a bit awkward, but it's fine. 10 degrees of gun depression, you can really work ridgelines with that. That's really great. Gun traverse and turret traverse. Now, turret traverse is quite bad. 25.6 degrees per second. Well, it's going to take a long time for you to turn your turret, but it's a tank destroyer with a turret. Usually, that does not work very well. You have 1,500 HP on the vehicle itself, so that's for tier 9 tank destroyer. That's about the average, I think. So nothing too bad there. 370 meters base view range. I did improve it with some of the things I picked right there. Stationary camo, not too bad, not too shabby when you have concealment and camouflage in Brothers in Arms. These are the skills I usually have on my tank destroyers. And if I really put everything into the vehicle, we play a lot of the tank. We get our field modifications. Let's see what happens if we take reinforced suspension. With reinforced suspension, we do improve our effective traverse on hard, soft, and medium terrain. The terrain resistances go down, so you actually are a lot faster. You have better track health, but at the same time, you do lose a bit of track traverse. But what you can see right here, the 2 degrees of tank traverse that you gain, well, when you're using the aiming lightweight suspension is really not worth it. So I much rather have reinforced suspension and profit of the effective traverse, the terrain resistance, and like the top speed on soft. That's what I would much rather have instead of lightweight suspension. Then we have right here dispersion values like aiming, gear slapping, or parallax adjustment. I would go for parallax adjustment. Then you have like for TDs, ejector turning or tuning, or the right angle periscope, which gives you better view range, but at the cost of some concealment. Right here, I think to get like the 60-meter additional view range, it's kind of worth it to me, to be fair. If you fire, well, minus 6% to concealment, but that's fine. So then I'm not really sure for TDs. A scouting slot would really improve your ability to scout for yourself. Survivability slot will improve your ability to run around and have an impact with your HP if you have enough HP. And then we have the map paint, which will give you more concealment, but it will reduce your reverse speed, which is already quite bad. Or you reduce your concealment and you gain 2 kph reverse speed. You can see it's actually quite a large change. And right here, I hope not to be in reverse too much in a tank destroyer. And since this vehicle has decent top speed and it's okay tank traverse, I would probably go for matte paints, since I will not be playing this tank as a frontline warrior. So having seen all of the characteristics, it doesn't look to be the greatest tank of all time, but it also doesn't look like the worst tank of all time. Having 4 rounds in an autoloader is always going to be nice, and it's certainly going to be a really nice addition when you're going to be playing a vehicle like this. Also, the intra-clip reload time is quite low with 2.3 seconds, so you can do quite a lot of damage in a short period. Like in 6.9 seconds, you can do 1,440 damage. That's quite nice to have. Now, finally, moving on to the equipment pieces. This is going to be quite interesting because one of the main problems with this tank that I can see right now is going to be, well, the reverse speed is going to be atrocious. Well, if we go with matte paints, but we're going to be quite nicely hidden and also have the view range at the same time. What we could do, what I really would want to pick, is to improve ventilation. Improved ventilation will give you better dispersion, better DPM. It's going to improve your power to weight ratio, I think, or should at least improve the turret traverse speed, the tank traverse, everything goes up a bit. So that's always nice. And if you already have like that slot, because I'm not going to be using improved hardening on this vehicle, that's quite nice. Then right here, with improved rotation mechanism, you'll have better turret traverse, better tank traverse as well. You're not going to be able to use the rammer, so that's not really worth it at this moment in time. Maybe if you want to stay more hidden, you could always go with low noise exhaust system. Be like really, really sneaky. Look at those stats. Stationary camo is really impressive then. But that would be something that would help you. Like, it would still help you in every situation. You don't have to wait for the camo net to engage. You could also go with improved aiming class 1, which will get the dispersion down further. But I think for that, you can just use a case of Coca-Cola, so you don't need to use that. Case of Coca-Cola is going to get the dispersion down to 0.34. It's going to increase the DPM. It's going to increase your tank traverse speed more. So everything here looks actually quite nice. Doesn't look too bad in my opinion. And what you could do is turbocharger. Maybe if you get a turbo on it as well, you get 54 kph. Your power to weight ratio increases quite a bit. You have better, well, you have 15 kph of reverse, what you lost prior, and you have like a really competitive, or much more competitive setup in my opinion, because you're going to have turret traverse speed, that's fine. Tank traverse is going to be great. Your mobility is going to be much better. The aim time, dispersion, everything is good because of the case of cola and the improved ventilation class 1 right there. So if you have the improved, like the bounty equipment right here, like, yeah, that will be amazing as well. This is a tier 9 premium tank. If you do get this tank, if you have the ability to get this vehicle, it would certainly be interesting to put bounty equipment on it, because you're going to be playing a lot of games. That's what I'm expecting, at least if you're trying to earn credits. Now, having said all that, we don't really know what the tank is like in gameplay because we have not been able to play it. And this is all hypothetically, but I think this is a loadout that is quite nice and a loadout that I would definitely run on this vehicle. Now, obviously, this is all wishful thinking. We don't have the tank yet, and I haven't spent a dime on World of Tanks in the last, well, about 2 years, 2.5 years now, I think. So it makes things a bit more difficult for me personally to actually have this tank. But this is just what I think. I think on the base of it, the tank itself is okay. It doesn't seem to be that incredibly like broken in any way or form. It does have 4 rounds in its clip, which is great. But at the same time, like, it's a small tank, which could be great as well. You know, it looks like really small. It could be a tank for the Astron Rex players. You know, Astron Rex players, they always loved the small factor of the vehicle. And this looks like a larger Astron Rex. But to be fair, personally, I think it looks quite interesting. It's supposed to be, I think, the beginning of the autoloaders for the American tech tree, because we know that we're going to get American autoloaders for TDs, I think. Oh no, they actually wanted to add more autoloaders to the American tech trees, I think. So yeah, it's a vehicle that doesn't seem to be broken in any way, shape, or form, and with the right equipment, you can make it actually quite a nice, viable option, in my opinion. Doesn't look too bad. Now I'm interested to see what this vehicle does in combat, and if players are running the same loadout I am on the Asian server. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. It's a bit difficult to talk right now since I still have a cold, but I do see you guys on the next video. Until then, have a good one.